before Amazon, before making any type of money, before people asking me what I did, how I did it, before being on social media at all, I was literally just a kid trying to find my way. Um, 12 different homes, surrounding myself by soccer my entire life, 5 different schools throughout my lifetime, just a bunch of pressure. And somehow that pressure turned into a blessing. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today is just my overall story because I never really came out here and talked about my story. So maybe, for some of the new subscribers or even people that have been watching me, or if you came from Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, you're going to learn about me and what my story is today. It might be more of a longer video and a slower talking video, but I'm just here to be authentic, raw, and tell y'all what I'm all about. So to start off, I'm going to start, kind of back just in my childhood. I'm not going to sit here and say I had the hardest life in the world, but I also never really got anything easy. I didn't come from money. My parents, weren't really raised with money either. My dad's dad, which is my grandpa, he was quite literally raised poor. He was one of 20 children and they were, at some point homeless. He's a military veteran, yada yada. And, so growing up, even for my parents as well, it wasn't necessarily easy. And I had teenage parents. They had me as a teenager. And so my life was slightly different than I would guess you could say the normal life of having the middle-aged or average aged parents, I should say. But yeah, so growing up with teenage parents, is definitely, like I said, it's different. It's not like, I got to watch my parents go from being, teenagers or as you could say, kids to grown adults. Whereas most people are probably watching their parents already have somewhat of an established life or be grown adults and just, getting older. Um, so with that, I think, it came a lot of lessons. I've always been very, very self-aware because of it. Like my parents, at the same time that they were great parents, like nobody's perfect, right? So I've been able to see them do things and be an example in good and bad ways, which being able to look back, I think that's probably one of the most important things, growing up, being just true, raw with your kids. And that's something that I've learned, when I have kids one day. I'm like, whatever I have going on in my life at the moment or whatever it is, like, you just got to let it be raw um, with your people because that created some sense of loyalty. Like, even though I was a kid, I became my parents' like best friend. And from their perspective, it may have hurt them in certain ways because our relationship as I was growing up, maybe let's just say 10 to teenager, like, yeah, we might have had our conflictions and whatnot at some point. My relationship with my mom wasn't the best, things like that. But that that comes with every kid and their parents' relationship, right? But through all of that, my parents have literally just been like they've been my best friends, they've been my main supporters. Um, and I'm grateful for that. I'm very, very grateful for that. That loyalty that my parents have brought in the sense of our family specifically, like our intermediate family. um, I don't think there's any other bond out there in the world that will be able to really replace that until I meet maybe my future wife or whatever it is. But yeah. So, anyways, kind of move forward past that. I, you know, lived in about 12 different homes as a kid, just moving from city to city, home to home. I don't think I was ever in a home for more than like 2.5 years to 3 years at a time. And that's a decent bit, but with that just came a lot of like uncomfortable change that I didn't necessarily expect or could do anything about. So throughout my life, and with that also, I had to change schools so many times. Two publics. I went to a public school and two private schools um all before high school, and then going from that, going into high school, I went back to a public school. And it was all four different like schools in different areas. So it was just kind of like a lot of change. Um, and with that, I feel like my life has become a lot about being able to like be the best at being able to adapt in whatever situation that I have to be in. Put me somewheres and I'm gonna adapt. And obviously I didn't realize that growing up and as a kid, but looking back on it now, I'm able to realize like I've been through a lot of unnecessary, uncomfortable changes. Not saying that they're unnecessary, but what I felt to be unnecessary in the time, it showed itself in the fact of like, okay, no, this is what's actually shaping you to be the person that you are. Um, so I'm actually grateful for, everything that I've been through, all the changes that I've had to adapt to, all of the habitats that I've had to adapt to, all the different environments. Um, because as a kid growing up, not everybody, like I was a social butterfly, but at the same time, like it was hard to go from leaving, first grade or no, leaving third grade, going to fourth grade. Like at that point, you have friends, you remember what's going on and whatnot, and not going to a different school, having to make a completely different friend group. And that's when kids start gossiping and shit. So like I'm the new kid, everybody's gonna talk about me. I ended up being fine, but like that's the things, that goes through a kid's mind. Um, but again, it's been able to shape me to be like the person that I am today. So, but yeah, to kind of go away from that and like into more of the high school era, which is so I'm 20 years old. I turned 21 in January of 2026. I graduated high school in 2023. I got into high school 2019, and that was probably the biggest change for me because that was the farthest city that I moved away from where I was originally from. And it was such a big change of people because I was at like a super small private school and then I went to a very big public school. So not only was it a ton of people, but it was a ton of new and different people than I was used to. Um, so obviously with that came some change too. And on top of that, freshman year of high school, that was when COVID happened. Um, so if I'm not mistaken, I didn't even finish out my freshman year of high school, which I enjoyed at the time. But with all of that happening at once, new school, new people, new group, kind of having to like prove myself to new people, or so I felt, and then also always being tapped into soccer. Like soccer's always surrounded my life. So the reason I moved to that high school was high school soccer. So going into that as a freshman as well, I played on the varsity team. So it was like I had to prove myself to people, is what I felt. And so COVID came along. That was another big thing that happened. And then we were literally quarantined, like couldn't leave our house and shit. So, I got into, I wouldn't say, I don't even like to call it like a depression, but like I just got in the state of like not really knowing what to do with myself because we couldn't even really like go out and play soccer if I wanted to. Um, and so with that, I'm not gonna lie, I started smoking weed a lot, which obviously at that age and the amount that I was doing it, it was definitely not good for me. Um, it, you know, made me quieter. It started putting me in a place of like, I guess you could call it it was like an addiction. Like I just all I thought about when I was like waking up and not having anything to do throughout the day, I was like, I'm gonna smoke weed and chill. And so all throughout my high school, that definitely played a factor. I would say all throughout high school, but like freshman, sophomore, and junior year specifically, it played a factor into like, I always had a problem with like just smoking a lot. And then at the same time, trying to be the star athlete, which it didn't really mesh well, especially as a soccer player. Like you have to run on average like 5 miles a game. And bro, I was really good at soccer. Don't get me wrong. Like on my best day, I was hard to compete with on the field. But that inconsistency that weed had on me was kind of that inconsistency that I was then relaying onto the field. And, the dream was always to go play college soccer, college soccer, college soccer. And, I slowly started to drift away from that, just as I got into the later years of high school, just, smoking more, partying more with friends, and not to say that it wasn't the normal high school thing. Like that's what a lot of people were doing in high school, right? And I was kind of just following along doing the same thing. Hate to admit it, but it is what it is. Like I'm being authentic and raw here. I followed the crowd. I did all the partying. I smoked the weed. I drank the alcohol underage and, got down. It was, you know, it was just a lot of things that didn't align with my goals at the time. And so kind of, just to kind of like wrap that up going into my senior year, it was actually a really good senior year as far as I would say my performance. I thought I did really well. I scored a bicycle my senior year, which I've been trying to bicycle since I was like 12 years old, in multiple games. So that was dope to do. I scored a lot of goals. And it was ultimately it fulfilled my soccer career, and I was very thankful for that. But going into not playing college soccer, it was, I didn't really know what was next. On top of that, my entire family was moving from Lafayette or Youngsville, Louisiana, but Lafayette, Louisiana, which is where I'm from, to Houston, Texas. And when I tell you it was like that, like I graduated high school one day, 2 days later we came to Houston for a week to like start unpacking everything. I went back to Louisiana, went on my senior vacation or senior trip, whatever, to the Bahamas for a week, came back, and the next day I was here. I moved here. Um, so like between the last day of school to like moving here, it was like this. So like I never really got to almost fully process that I was about to make this big ass change. But at the same time, it was in the back of my mind. So I was, doing as much as I could with friends and this and that into school. And, you know, I would say my high school experience was fulfilled. I also tried doing, a little t-shirt business senior year or junior, senior year, whatever. Didn't really work out that much, but like I always also had that mindset of like I I have something inside of me that I do believe is special that God has put inside of me. That's not normal, and I believe He puts it inside of everyone. You just have to be able to like channel that inside of you. I know that may sound weird, but like you just have to actually believe in that. Um, and with that being said, I had no clue what I was about to be going to do, not playing college soccer and moving to Texas where I knew no one, didn't know, what was going on, brand new place again. But this time, life is real. Like I'm 18 years old, I'm graduating high school. I'm going to a community college, but I'm going to a community college because I don't really have any other options right now. Um, and we moved here June 1st of 2023. And by July, I was working at a restaurant that was actually paying me decent. It was, I would say, like if I was working there every day, 40 hours a week, even more than 40 hours a week, probably make a little bit more than 3 grand a month at the restaurant doing what I was doing specifically. I was not waiting. Um, and that's when I also found Amazon. So I didn't have a horrible job. It was a pretty good job for being 18. And outside of working, I was doing like some online community college and doing nothing, playing my game and just like trying to figure out what's next. At the same time, I've always been intrigued in online business. And, that's kind of when I was introduced to Amazon just because I was scrolling on Instagram, saw a mentor, or I found a mentor, paid into the mentorship and learned how to do Amazon. Um, and that's to look back on all that before I go deep into that side of things. Like everything happened quick from the time that I turned 18 to the time that I graduated high school to the time that I moved to Texas to the time that I started my own online business. It all happened extremely quick after all I've been surrounded by for my entire life was like soccer, 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 soccer. I'm gonna go play college soccer. And then now we're going to community college, running a business, and working at a restaurant. So it was it was definitely a big change. Now, to start going into the actual, business side of things, like I've said before, I'm sure you've heard this story more so. Um, you know, I started Amazon within about 3 months, did 10K in total. Fourth month, started doing 10K, like nothing, consistently. And then after a couple months of doing that, I, taught one of my friends read, who was from back home. We never really connected our entire life, but we used to play baseball when we were super, super young. I didn't really mention that because baseball was not that big part of my life, but I did play baseball from like 7 to 8 or 6 to 7, whatever. And he went and killed it. He did like $35,000 his first 20 days or something like that. And after a couple months of us working together and continuing to scale our own stores, we were like, all right, let's partner up and create a mentorship. And from then, the mentorship, we've been able to teach over 100 students, and some of our best students are literally doing $20,000 to $30,000 a month now. And I'm to look back on everything, and I'm going to talk more about the actual details of, like, how I feel about, or maybe, what's the entrepreneurial spark that I had, and things like that. But just to be able to now actually look back on everything and talk about it and realize the things that I've been able to do from where I've came from, I'm I'm happy with it. I'm not happy with, or I should say, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I will be there, and I'm on the road to it. And I'm extremely grateful to be able to come here and turn around and look back and realize that all because I made all these uncomfortable changes in my life unwillingly, really. But that last one kind of was unwilling to not go, or the last one was willing, sorry, to not go play college soccer and to move to Texas and then randomly start my own online business. That's what changed everything for me. And I'm very, very grateful, and I thank myself looking back to 2 years ago that I did that. Um, because now my life will be changed forever. But yeah, so to kind of go back, like I was saying, to talk more about that entrepreneurial spark, uh, I definitely get it from my parents. Like, my parents have also ran their own businesses before. My mom is an entrepreneur. She doesn't necessarily work for anybody. um, she does photography, she does real estate, and she does interior designing for a realtor, I believe. Um, and then, my dad does well for himself as well. He's an operations manager for a very, very big company. But with all that being said, I would say, having a kid at such a young age, at the same time that it could have saved them in a sense of putting them on the right track in life and knowing that they're going to have to provide for a child, obviously having to provide for an extra person is already going to reduce the amount that you would be providing for if you were just providing for yourself, or two, I should say. Um, and I know my dad he does well for himself. He's very financially literate, but there's levels to this game, right? And no one in my bloodline has ever touched $1 million. Nobody has touched a million net. Nobody has got to say that they're a millionaire. And I'm going to be the one to change that. And it's not that I just believe it, like, I will be the one to change that. And that is that main driving factor to me, because I want to be able to show my parents the next level. They've reached a good level, especially from where we've came from. But there, like I said, there's the levels actually never end. But there is a millionaire slash multimillionaire status level that makes your life so much different than everybody else's. Um, and and I want to be the one to do that for my family, and I want to be able to, provide for generations from now. Not necessarily saying that I want to pass all of this cash net down to, all my kids or grandkids in the future, but I'm going to be able to create a foundation and create something to where my kids will continue to be able to run and create more generational wealth with what they learn, with the way that they do business, with the way that they're going to have to catch on to the businesses that I started and run them and make them better, or recreate it and make it even better, whatever it is. But that's really what I want to create for not just myself, but for my family now, for the family that I'm going to have in the future. And again, to be able to look back on all this and just see what I've actually been able to create within the last 2 years, I'm proud of myself. I'm not where I want to be yet exactly, but I'm headed in the right direction and I'm exactly where I need to be right now. And everybody is exactly where they need to be at right now. And once you realize and understand that, you'll be able to take each situation that you go through in life as a positive. You'll be able to take something that is going to make you a better version of yourself out of that situation and going into the next. Because, you know, to be able to become that best version of you, you have to be able to adapt to uncomfortable changes. You have to be able to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. Um, you have to put yourself in situations that you actually grow. You have to learn lessons from life. You have to do wrong to be able to learn how to do good. And, you know, life is really a beautiful story. And if you can be able to look back on everything, be self-aware of, you know, why everything has led up to be able to do what you're doing now, I think that's super important. And that's why actually I've documented a lot of my journey as in these videos. I don't get a lot of YouTube video or YouTube views, but I get to go back and watch a video that I made 8, 9 months ago and see what I was doing, see what I was talking about. Cause I don't really remember, but I can go back to the video and watch, and I can listen to my old self, and I could see what I was doing at that time and see if I've improved now, or see if I actually took away the things that I said that I was taking away and implemented them into my life now. Um, there's, you know, there's a lot of beauty in that. But yeah, to kind of end everything off, you know, if I just kind of want to give a message to any kid, or I should say teenager, kid as in, you know, high schooler, or maybe you're 18 years old coming out of high school, not really knowing what you do with your life. You're kind of feeling lost. Like, it's gonna be okay, but don't go into it with this, you know, sad or like, oh, my life's changing. I don't know what to do with myself, this and that. Like, don't start making excuses or looking at the negative things that's happening in that situation. You have to be prepared, and you have to be able to expect the unexpected. Um, because when you confidently step into a room where you don't know what's going to happen behind that door, that's where you become the best version of yourself. And I've been able to prove that to myself by stepping into rooms that maybe I didn't want to step into, or stepping into rooms that made me feel extremely uncomfortable. But I knew that I was going to get a positive outcome out of it, and it was going to do something for my life that made me at least 1% better. And that's Kaizen. It's right here on my is right here on my wrist. I got it tattooed when I was 18 years old, right when I graduated high school, because I told myself that if there's anything that I'm going to do from doing anything that I've ever done in my life, I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to be 1% better at least than I was yesterday. Um, and that's been something that I've held on to every single day since, you know, since I could remember, because consistency through that is going to be the most important thing. You have to be consistent every single day to get 1% better. You have to be consistent when you don't want to do things. You have to be consistent when you feel like there's no reason to be doing something. You still have to be consistent and do it, because it's all about the bigger picture and, you know, the outlook, the perspective. It's all about, what am I really doing all of this for? And if you can't figure that out, cool. Take a step back, pivot, figure out what you want to do, figure out your purpose, and start working towards that. Um, and if you can't figure that out, the last thing that I'll say, and the last piece of advice that I could give to anybody, is start getting into the Word of God. Put yourself in a relationship with God and make it as good as you can with Him if you haven't already. And even if you are already, continue to be consistent on that. Continue building that better relationship with God. The more you walk through His path with His lead, the better and the more clear you're going to see the vision. Um, and that's where I'll end everything off. And because I think that's probably the most important thing is that relationship. So yeah, that is the end of this video. Like I said, I wanted to just come on here, be authentic, raw, kind of tell y'all my story. There's definitely, I could sit here all day and probably tell you a story year by year to like paint a full good picture, but obviously that's not how people tell their life stories, right? But that's my story. That's how I've kind of got to the point where I'm at now. I hope some of you may have been able to take something away from this video. Um, if you did, or even if you didn't, and you would like to see more content like this that you may take something away from in the future, drop a subscribe. Follow me on all socials, Instagram, TikTok at thereal.kd. Comment anything that you'd like to see moving forward, or any recommendations of things that you would like to see my being do specifically, because I definitely need some YouTube or vlog ideas. I got a fire vlog for y'all coming at the end of this month, at the end of August. But yeah, with that being said, I appreciate you all for being here and hearing my story. And if you made it this far, you are an absolute real one. I love you. Have a good day. God loves you, and I will see you tomorrow.